Hey guys! So, we finally did reach the 1000 subscriber milestone, and this also means that the winners of the giveaway have been selected and notified via a YouTube private message. So please do check your messages, people. If you don't know how to check your private messages, you have to go to Creator Studio and from the Community options select Messages. And don't worry if you didn't have any luck this time around. I will for sure organize another giveaway at the 2.5K subscriber milestone. Until then, however, there are a lot of videos to be made, and with the imminent release of World of Warships, a ship review would be perhaps the most fitting. To mix things up a little, I started to go down the American battleship line as well, among other reasons because I guess this will be the line that most players will try out the first time, and it can be a quite shocking experience. In general, the low-tier battleships leave a lot to desire, and even apart from the natural learning curve, you might feel clumsy rather than powerful. It won't be really until much later when the true fun begins. The Japanese line improves greatly with the Kongo at tier 5, and with the US line you actually have to grind all the way up until tier 8 to reach the really awesome part. Now, that's of course not to say that you can't enjoy the previous ships or do well in them, but you definitely have to be prepared to face a few drawbacks here and there. Today's suspect, the USS South Carolina at tier 3, is no different, and the aim of this video is really to let you know what you can honestly expect and to hopefully show you how you can make the most of it. The gameplay at the end of the review is a 64k damage run, so you can make it work. If you want to jump straight to the action bits, the link stands ready in the description below. As for the rest of us, let's have a quick look at the past of this historical battleship. The USS South Carolina was a top-notch ship in her days. She was not only the lead ship of her class of dreadnought battleships, but in fact she was the first American dreadnought. And yet, there actually isn't a really long list of glorious engagements we could have a look at, as she served most of her time before the First World War. Commissioned in 1910, she did mostly patrol the eastern coast of the US, especially the Mexican coast during the Mexican Revolution. She did also take part of the US occupation of Veracruz in 1914. As the USA entered the First World War in 1917, she served as a training ship first, and then was assigned on convoy escort duty. But an unfortunate propeller accident kept her from active service until the war ended. In 1919, she made 4 European trips bringing home the American soldiers, followed by some more training service, but then, as part of the Washington Naval Treaty, she was finally broken up for scrap in 1924. So, that's not really the stuff of legends, but adequate, as getting into legendary fights can get really tricky in-game as well. Let's see why that is exactly. Contrary to your usual routine, let's skip the guns for the moment and go straight to the mobility, which is one of the most important factors for US battleships. These things are bloody slow, and it's not just the South Carolina with its 18-knot top speed. You will be stuck with at best 21 knots all the way up and including the Tier 7 Colorado, and it's only really from the Tier 8 North Carolina that you can actually get around the battlefield comfortably. In general, you really can't afford to go the long way around. If you don't go to the hot zones from the beginning of the match, you can spend entire games chasing after the enemy without firing your gun even once. Well, I say chasing, but you won't be able to catch even a carrier with this speed. Now, it's not to say that these ships would be completely immobile though, quite the contrary. Especially fully upgraded, they have in general a rather tight turning circle and a really good rudder shift time. The South Carolina is no different. 480-meter turning circle is actually really sharp for a battleship, and the 10.7 second rudder shift time is very comfortable as well. What this means is that you will be able to avoid a lot more shots by dodging left and right, and you can also give a hard time to the enemy torpedo bombers if you pay attention. Well, at least you can screw with them by turning into them at the right moment, cause your AA guns won't do much harm themselves. At least you have 4 dual-purpose 76mm guns, but they only have a 2 km radius against planes and 3 km range against enemy ships. Well, what can you expect at Tier 3? And that neatly brings us to the main guns as well. You have in total 8 305mm guns located in 4 turrets, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. You have a flat 30-second reload time between shots, and you have to calculate also with a dispersion of 172 meters, which, by the way, is a lot higher than you have on the Kawachi, the Tier 3 Japanese battleship. The turrets turn alrightish with a 38-second turning time for a 180-degree turn. So, overall, it's not too bad, but then you suddenly realize, oh my god, you have only an 11-kilometer firing range, even fully upgraded. Now in the low tiers, that's absolutely defendable. Here at Tier 3, the Japanese Kawachi, for example, has it actually even worse. But you have to be prepared for a serious firing range limitation throughout the US battleship line, again up until the top of the top. In general, you will almost always have ships on the enemy team that are faster than you and have a much longer firing range, so in end effect they can totally dictate the engagements. If they want, they can keep their distance and take you apart without them ever being in real danger. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the reasons why you should never go alone in a US battleship. The almost 14 km surface detectability range and the 7.5 km air detectability range do not really make things easier either. Now, all of this might sound a little grim overall, but you just have to adapt a different playstyle and accept a few limitations here and there. The US battleships are still quite capable of dishing out some serious punishment, especially as their armor is quite good. Just don't rely on it too much when you are facing higher tier opponents. Moving over to modules and upgrades, another thing you just have to expect is that fully stocked these ships will suck quite hard. Rudder shift time, top speed and firing range all have to be upgraded as soon as possible. My recommendation for the South Carolina would be to go for the engine upgrade first to get rid of your horrible 16-knot base top speed, then go for the hull upgrade to get your rudder shift time in shape, and finally sort out that firing range. Regarding the optional upgrades, I suggest to go for the main battery modification to protect your main guns and the good old damage control system modification for the reduced chance of fires and flooding. As for the commander skills, for the first 3 tiers I suggest basic fire training to improve your secondary and AA guns, followed by expert marksman with a slight improvement on your turret rotation, and finally at tier 3, superintendent for that additional charge for your repair ability. So, that's a quick look at the South Carolina. I think it's time to get stuck in the middle of it and see how it performs in action. Alright, so here we are in our South Carolina. It's a tier 4 standard battle on the New Dawn map. And we have plenty of time to talk about the ship in general and the ways you should be sailing it. Cause, well, we are in our South Carolina with a fully upgraded top speed of 18 whole knots, which means I will be spending the first couple of minutes of the game sailing into the location where I can take actually shots with my very limited firing range of only 11 kilometers. Now, we are actually in a rather comfortable matchup. It's a tier 4 game, there is 1 enemy CV, 3 battleships, a mixture of tier 3s and 4s, so it's not too bad. It really isn't until tier 5 matches that it starts to get really ugly. Tier 4 I can handle, no problem. Now in the beginning, I will always load AP shells. Especially in a battleship, I need AP against cruisers, I need AP against battleships, unless they are super heavily armored. And, well, I can't really switch back and forth between HE and AP should I encounter destroyers, so I will only be switching to HE if I know that there is a destroyer engagement coming up and I have the time for it. It's still better to stick with AP and then just schedule your HE shells as the next shot to be loaded if you are facing a destroyer in close quarter combat. It's better to take a shot and then take the risk to overpenetrate rather than to, in panic, smash the HE button and then wait for 30 seconds until you get torpedoed. But I think that's quite obvious. So, about 2.5 minutes into the game, and we are really far away. Oh, look at that, we are almost entering our own cap circle. Yay! I guess nobody will get dizzy from the dazzling speed that we are sailing here. And that's really a thing of the US battleship line. The South Carolina is really bad with an 18 knot top speed, but everything from tier 2 to tier 7 has really a top speed of only 21 knots, which is not much faster. And that's a hell of a long way away from the Japanese battleships. So if you are used to driving those, it will feel super bad at first. But once we get into position, should be able to make good use of our armor, which is the trade-off. So let's have a quick look at what we are up against. There is an enemy Langley, so we should be quite safe. Probably one torpedo squadron, and the rest is, yeah, mixture of tier 3s and 4s, nothing to be really worried about. Now, at least as I'm so slow, I have plenty of time to see where the enemy ships get spotted and where the engagement will take place. I think the enemies will stay around the cap circle, left and right of it, so there is an enemy battleship incoming. Should be good enough. Now, you see, he's turning. All the other ships can take shots at him, and he would be well able to take shots at me as well. Unless it's a tier 3 Kawachi, which I can't really tell from this distance. But I'm in no position to take shots myself. Fully upgraded, the range on the South Carolina is about 11 kilometers, 11.1 perhaps. So he's about to get into range. And I try to lob some shots over this island. And now he's in range. But only one of the shells makes it past the island, and the ship disappears into cover. Oh well. There's nothing really anything else I could shoot at, so it was worth a shot. Now there is an enemy destroyer up here on my right hand side, behind that island, so I have to be careful about that guy, not to get torpedoed in the side end. In fact, there is also an enemy torpedo squadron bumbling about a bit further north, so I have to be really careful about those guys as well. A slow US battleship, especially a low tier one without any real AA defense, is a super inviting target for enemy torpedo bombers. Oh look, couple of minutes, it's already, and finally it seems an enemy will sail into our firing range. Yay! That will be an enemy cruiser. So first shots out, probably not quite enough lead. And indeed, the shots fall short. Oh, there is also an enemy torpedo squadron incoming, but I think he has his eyes on our friendly cruiser. Nevertheless, we should keep an eye on him in case he changes his mind. And there is an enemy battleship. He is well within range. So, and of course, we are a perfect target for him. And he might be firing HE here, which is a mistake. That we can capitalize on that. We didn't take too much damage, we repaired it instantly, and now we are broadside onto him. So we can release salvo after salvo. Now I'm about to pass this small little passage where this enemy destroyer is, so I have to really be careful, because he will be launching torpedoes if he sees a big fat battleship sailing through that channel. Okay, one more shot, and I have to be careful about those torpedoes, but I think they just ran out of gas. Now that was a bit better shot. And there is the enemy destroyer. We have to turn. There is no way in a million years that he didn't launch torpedoes there. And I'm slow. And I did slow down to avoid the torpedoes that were coming at the front of me. And there we go. Enemy torpedoes incoming from behind. Mistake my shot. This battleship. another good hit, and now I have to focus. Yeah, that's exactly why you have to take evasive maneuvers. If I would have waited for the torpedoes to actually show up on the surface of the water, it would have been too late. I might have a really tight turning circle, but I'm just quite slow, so it still takes time to take evasive action, and enemy destroyer is closing in to torpedo me, but I have a couple of things to say about it, namely 3 305mm AP shells which do the job. So, destroyer menace has been dealt with, and now to get into position, and I think it's time to go on a cruise, because it will take bloody ages to sail around that island to be able to shoot at the battleship. Now here we couldn't really do anything about that torpedo, we were just too slow, but we could minimize it, the damage to only one hit. And I think we had about 3 full salvos fired at that until now, which is not a bad result. Also, repairability should be up and running, so we will be able to get some of that health back. So lucky enough, the torpedo hits didn't cause any flooding. Probably the upgrade did help us out a little bit there. So we didn't even have to use our repairability, which is good. Because as a battleship you will receive a lot of HE shells, especially from cruisers. And you can burn really quickly these days. And if you just use your repairability and you burn from 2 or 3 spots, you are seriously screwed. Now it would be important to take this battleship out as fast as possible, not because he's capping, because he will be dead before he can do any harm, but I don't want him to take out our carrier. So now it's a good time. Shots can go over the hill, and whee! So much for that battleship. So you see, it takes ages to get into cover, but when you do, they will feel it. And again, close distance. He is now in range, but most important task for me right now is to get in as close as possible. I will have plenty of time to turn broadside onto him later on. That looks about alright, perhaps a little bit too much lead. Nah, it was close enough. Now he's within 10 kilometers, so should be able to pepper him with my main battery guns. So it's time to turn. Broadside onto him, he is turning as well, and here comes the welcoming fire, but luckily he misses us just like we do him. Another salvo out. Now that's a little bit better. It's not amazing, 2600 damage, but it's better than nothing. He also gets the attention of our friendly torpedo squadron, which is good. And there you see, that's battleship armor for you. Oh, and I actually did miss this torpedo squadron, which is lucky, because I didn't get a full broadside of torpedoes into me. So just getting back to my previous salvo, there were actually 3 hits on that battleship with 0 damage. So armor works now, absolutely. So you have to try to aim your shots, if you can, to land in the middle of it, hitting the tip or the very highly... Ooh, that was a good one. Or the very highly armored side of the ship runs the risk of not doing any damage or only doing minimal one. You really want those big juicy shots, because they will rip the enemy ship apart before he's able to retaliate. Now that's actually quite a small island, so I should be able to lob some shells over, which I try to do. Unfortunately, That was way too much lead for that ship. And perhaps the shells also landed just after him. So it's not really one of my best shots ever, but we should be able to reload before he clears the island. Yeah, it should be just in time. Okay, there he is. And time to do some damage. Looks good. Alright, another 5000 damage. It's not any record breaker, but with solid hits like this, we can do some serious punishment and help our team out. Now the game was for the longest time quite close, but now we are in a really comfortable situation. We know where both of the enemy battleships are. They are now splitting up, and this battleship has been screwed. Citadel hit in the face. Okay, so I really have no chances to catch the other battleship. I really have to leave it to my colleagues there. But look at that, there is an enemy torpedo squadron. And that means the carrier can't be far away. And in fact, he is within shooting range. Now, perhaps the first thing that most people would do here is to switch to HE, because, as we all know, you have to shoot HE at carriers in order to set them ablaze and make sure that they can't launch their planes. But this time around I'm not really afraid of those torpedo bombers. So I will stick with AP, because it should be really easy to penetrate this ship. And if I do, AP shells from my main batteries should do the job.
Enemy aircraft carrier blown up.
Alright, so only one battleship left, but with 18 knot top speed, I really have no chance of catching him. So the only sensible thing to do is to go for the cap, especially as now we are within the last 5 minutes. I really hope those guys can take him out, but for safety, let's capture a few cap points, and there he goes. So this was a rather enjoyable victory in the South Carolina. Limitations here and there, but we still managed to sink 4 enemy ships and score 28 hits with our 305mm guns. Now this was enough to get second place in the team by XP earned with 1123 base XP. It's not bad at all in a tier 4 match. But this is the real deal. About 64,500 damage done in a tier 3 ship is good stuff. Always try to aim for weak spots to get those citadel hits. The damage bonus from them is just too good to be ignored. Perhaps we will take a look at those weak spots in a separate video later. Right, so this was my short review on the South Carolina, the tier 3 American battleship. I hope you found it useful. If you did, thank you for considering giving it a like or sharing it. Next up, I want to do another arty review in World of Tanks, perhaps of the tier 8 American M4043, followed by another one of my favorite funny moments. Take care guys, enjoy World of Warships if you are going to try it out now, and I look forward to seeing you in one of the next videos.